Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to start a new series today about one of the very small halachot that we have regarding slichot, but it is in the Code of Jewish Law, and I think we have to analyze it and ask ourselves, do we keep it, don't we keep it, and if we don't, then why? And this is it, very small little halacha. Says the Rama, and I quote his words, the yesh mekomot, and there are places, nohagim shamitpalel slichot mitpalel kol hayom, that the person who davens slichos is the chazan for all the rest of the davenings all day. That's what the Rama says right at the beginning of Hilchos Rosh Hashanah. The question is why? After all, slichos is one davening, and then we have Shacharit. It seems very strange that the Rama says that the chazan for slichos should be the chazan for the subsequent davenings all day. And the question is why? As to the question of why, we have 5 different reasons that our great poskim bring. The most classical reason is brought by the Ateret Tzvi on the Shulchan Aruch and others, and that is Shahamatchil b'mitzvah omrim lo gmor. There's a famous Medrash Tanchuma that talks about Moshe Rabbeinu. The poor guy, he went ahead and on the eve of leaving Egypt, when everyone was getting their luggage together and whatnot, this fine gentleman went ahead and fulfilled what Yosef actually swore the Jewish people to do, and that is to bring his body to Israel. And indeed, he almost did it. He eventually brought it through all the 40 years in the desert with all the trials and tribulations, but at the end of the day, he was not successful to get into Israel, and therefore, the pasuk in Yehoshua that says that they reburied Yosef in Israel does not call the mitzvah on his name, but rather the Jewish people. And I quote the pasuk, "V'tatzmot Yosef asher he'elu b'nei Yisrael b'Mitzrayim kavru b'Shechem." And the bones of Yosef that the Jewish people brought out of Egypt, they buried in Shechem. So, as you can see, Hamatchil b'mitzvah omrim lo gmor, one that starts the mitzvah should finish it. So therefore, says the Ateret Tzvi, you started to daven, you started to say slichos, you were the chazan, so continue with Shacharit. That's the reason of the Ateret Tzvi. No, it's not an isolated case. We have cases like this throughout the Shulchan Aruch, and allow me to bring 2. The Torah says that once upon a time, after the meal, they would bring mugmar to the table, some good smelling something, and everyone would say, Borei minei besamim. Says the Torah that the guy who benches on the wine, mezuman, after the meal, should be the one that makes the bracha on the mugmar. And explains the Magen Avraham that the reason for this is, even though the mugmar is after benching, the fact is, if they brought it before benching, Zachabo, he gets the right to say it. Why? Because he started to lead brachos, he continues to lead brachos. Example number 1. Example number 2, literally from our period of time of the year, the Rama says in Hilchos Rosh Hashanah that if indeed you have a Baal Tokeya who is not the Chazan, then Ra'ui Sho Toha Tokeya Yitka Gamken Al Seder HaBrachot, the one that blew the shofar before Musaf should be the one that blows during the Chazarat Hashatz of Musaf, or during both the silent Amida and the public Amida of Musaf. Ki Amatchil b'mitzvah Omrim lo gmor. You start the mitzvah, you end the mitzvah. So, reason number 1, most quoted, is you started the mitzvah of leading slichos, end with the mitzvah of davening Shacharit. The Binyan Shlomo, Rav Shlomo HaKohen, who was a dayan in Vilna, known as Rav Shlomo the Dayan, his years 1828 to 1905, indeed has a series of questions against this point of view. Number 1, at the end of the day, we're not talking about hamatchil b'mitzvah omrim lo gmor, you started the mitzvah, finish it. Like Moshe started to take the bones of Yosef out of Mitzrayim, he should have been the one to actually bury them and finish the mitzvah. These are 2 different mitzvot. One's called Slichot and one's called Shacharit. One's called Slichot, one's called Mincha. What does one have to do with the other? Number 2, At the end of the day, our minhag is, in every shul, that there's a chazan for Shacharit and a different chazan for Musaf. For example, in Maseches Rosh Hashanah, talking about Rosh Hashanah, it says Hasheni Matkiya, namely the chazan for Musaf, called the Sheni, the second chazan of the day, the Baal Musaf, which is not the Baal Shacharis, is the one that actually does the tkiyos, and therefore we have an ancient custom that we divided up. Number 3, indeed, that has not just been the custom on Rosh Hashanah, that is the custom in general. In Maseches Rosh Hashanah, it seems very mashma, the ikar ha-mitzvah hu she'yitpalel acher mishum deror Rava adrat melech. In other words, we like to divide up the mitzvahs between different people, simply because we very much like to have a lot of people involved in mitzvahs. And that is exactly what happened in the Beis HaMikdash. They would divide up the various works between the Kohanim so that many people, Yisku Harabim, the mitzvot. So why is it that the Chazan for Slichos is also the Chazan for Shacharis? And finally, he says, with due respect, if indeed this is your reason, and the Gra brings a Yerushalmi, and a Tosfos that explains a Matke b'mitzvah mimhog more, how can it be that the Chazan for Slichos can say, you know what, it's okay, give it to someone else? If it's a halacha, a Matke b'mitzvah mimhog more, then you should ultimately go ahead and do it. A wonderful book that was put out by the REITs publications called Batei Yosef, with all the Torahs of Rav Soloveitchik on the period of time that we're about to go into, says basically that the reason for this halacha is that slichos is basically the introduction to all the tefillos of the day. We're asking God, please accept all the tefillos of the day. So the guy who asked for it should be the one that actually davens the tefillos of the day. And therefore, says Rav Soloveitchik, that ultimately if you daven slichos and you don't daven shachris, lo kiyem hafet haminhag l'mar slichot, because one is connected to the other. The Binyan Shlomo, Rav Shlomo Levilna, has a totally different reason for this particular halacha. And he says it's not because you started a mitzvah, you have to finish it. He says it's appeasement. You're giving him a very lowly job to lead slichos. What slichos? It's basically nothing. Davening is a halacha. Slichos is a minhag. And you have to do something to appease him. And we have a case like this. Mishnah in Masechet Megillah says that the guy who says maftir should say musaf, because musaf is something real. And Haftorah, even though we think it's a great thing, it's on a lowly level. You can even give it to someone under bar mitzvah. And therefore, to appease him, we give him musaf as well. And indeed, that's why this halacha is there, namely because slichos is on such a low level, it's a minhag, and shachris or mincha is a halacha. We appease him by giving him something more real. Brings another case, and that is the guy who debts the Trumat Hadeshen, taking a dustpan and taking a little of the ashes off the Mizbeach every single day, was also the one that got the big kavod of putting the actual wood onto the Mizbeach. Taking a little ashes off, cleaning the Mizbeach is not such a great job, not to mention it's done in the middle of the night, literally like Slichos, middle of the night, and therefore, he says, we want to appease him, so we give him a bigger job. So the reason is not Matke b'mitzvah mimlok more, but rather appeasement. Comes along Rav Moshe Sternbuch and says exactly the opposite of Rav Shlomo Levilna. You see, we think Slichos is a great thing, so we get the best chazan for Slichos, but at the end of the day, Slichos is only a minhag. Shachris, mincha, is a real halacha. So we want to make clear to the people, with due respect to Slichos, where you get the great chazan who says all the nigunim, with due respect, davening is more important. And therefore, we want to make it clear to the people, so we make sure that he davens both. And finally, the Eliyahu Rabbah brings a reason that I don't think is so relevant today, and that is that the person that said slichos was usually the one in shul that fasted. So he's the most appropriate, suitable person to lead davening, because he fasted. He is fasting and doing tshuva and doing much more than the common folk, and therefore he should be the chazan for slichos. So, to make a long story short, we find 4 reasons why the chazan for slichos should be the chazan for the rest of the davenings of the day. The question is, does this apply today? And we'll have to go through ramifications to see, is there any ramifications between these reasons? And if there are, does it apply today?
Al Israel,